probably my biggest frustration with our current education system is we're not utilizing that to the best of our ability. Too often times we're just wanting to medicate kids and say, oh, you got ADHD. Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of The Why. Today, super excited to sit down with someone that I'm sure after this interview I'll be able to call a friend. I know our morals definitely align pretty significantly just in short conversation. So sitting down with, I'll call him my friend already, Mr. Chris Sommers. Yes, Chris, thank you for being on the podcast, man. Excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me out, Dylan.
Of course.
Nice long drive down the closed Route 13.
Dude, they've got every freaking road closed in between here and Sandusky.
I know. I took a little back road that was just big enough for the Jeep, and there was some guy behind me. He couldn't see over the hills. He was trying to get around. I thought for sure he was gonna.
Yeah, well, that's the pain in the butt with 13 being closed, man. Is everybody wants to freaking gun.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna drive at the speed limit.
Yeah, this road's 35. There's kids around.
Yeah. You know, there's little Amish kids running around, man. I'm not into that. That's not on my conscience, brother. That's not on my conscience. So, good deal, man. Well, why don't you kind of give me the elevator pitch about you? Tell me about yourself, man. Who are you?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love the name of this podcast. When I was driving over here, I was thinking, it would be really cool to kind of share a little bit about myself and kind of what led me into wanting to do specifically this line of work, not just at Campbell Christian Community Center, but this whole genre of work that I've been a part of. So I'll go ahead and start with the day that I was born. April 14th, I came out an 18-pound baby.
18 pounds?
The doctors described me as a raccoon holding a bowling ball. No. So grew up in a family. There was 4 of us boys.
Okay.
And then my sister. I'm the youngest of 5.
Okay.
But we also, for long periods of time, would have cousins that would come and stay with us and live with us long term. So I had 2 boy cousins that stayed with us, and then 1 female cousin. So we had a house full of kids.
Oh yeah, bro.
We were all pretty outgoing kids, so there was always sleepovers going on.
Something going on, yeah.
Yeah, all the neighbor kids always crashed at our house.
You had the fun house.
We had the fun house, but my parents also bickered a lot, so it was always entertaining. It was the fun house until Dad got home from work, and then we'd all be kicked outside and door locked, don't come back, go play on a trampoline, play in the woods. So. Anyways, yeah, so grew up in a great family, a lot of love, lots of good stuff going on all the time.
Awesome.
But with me being the last child that came into this family, my parents, from the time they were young, they ended up getting pregnant in high school with my first brother, which was not necessarily a bad thing. All things work out for good.
Yeah.
But that being said, my parents being teenagers, having a son, it was challenging.
Yeah.
It was very challenging. And so they grew up in households. My dad was adopted from the time that he was young.
Okay.
So grew up in a foster home. And so he grew up experiencing some not great things.
Yeah.
Just the reality of what foster care was back then. My mom grew up in a household, again, with a whole lot of love, but a whole lot of dysfunction as well. So both of my parents grew up in scenarios that I would categorize as unstable.
Yeah.
There was alcoholism, there was abuse, violence, all kinds of things of that nature. So you have these 2 teenagers that have a kid while they're in high school.
They're still kids. Yeah.
Yep. And so then right after another, they have my 3 brothers. So they have 3 kids by the time they're 20 years old, and they're learning the communication skills and habits of the parents that they came from, that I love. They're my grandparents.
Yeah.
But flaws and all, we're all broken people. So my brothers and my sister grew up with a very different set of parents that I grew up with. So my parents picked up on some of those habits, alcohol, some elements of abuse.
Yeah.
Suspect there was some drug use within the house. And my brothers grew up under that. So they grew up with a different set of parents than myself. So for myself, it was very interesting by the time I became around 7 or 8 years old. My parents, when they were 30, became Christians, started to turn their lives around. No longer alcoholics, no longer abusing substances. Not perfect. They still had a lot of those habits of life that entrap us for a long time that they were working out. But my brothers picked up on what was sown into them.
It was already too late for those guys.
Yep. And so, by the time they were 7, 8, 9 years old, they were sneaking beer out of the drive-through downtown,
Yep.
taking it to the woods, doing their thing. And so basically all of them were alcoholics before they were really even teenagers.
Yeah.
And so they all have gone through that themselves.
And they're all in recovery, or?
All in some form of recovery,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And so they've made a whole bunch of progress, but again, it's taken time.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was very confused seeing it because I saw my parents who were far from perfect.
Yeah.
But I didn't really understand why my siblings had kind of gone off the deep end so far.
Yeah.
Especially alcohol, drugs being mixed in, also having kids very, very young,
It wasn't adding up.
girls and women in and out of the house. I'm like, man, what the heck is going on? You know, police officers showing up at the house all the time looking for one of them. So, fast forward a little bit. Mom has drastically changed her life. She's not the same person. Dad trails a little bit behind, still has lots of problems. Again, his foster environment.
A lot of it's trauma.
Trauma related that was never dealt with.
Yep.
So, my mom, I'm about 11 years old. She decides that, she doesn't just decide, she wants to start working with kids within the community. So she goes and she starts working at a church in Port Clinton, Ohio. And so we went over and we visited before she took that job. And when we were over there, I noticed that there's something different about what's going on here. Like there's such a love present within like this community.
You just feel it.
You feel it. It's tangible. It's in the air. You can breathe it. It's part of who they were. And so my mom's like, you know what? I think this is what God's calling me to do. So here I am, 10 or 11 years old. Mom is now all of a sudden taking me to this very, very poor, impoverished, unstable church. You walk in there, everyone has tattered clothes. You walk in, there's a smell to the place.
Oh, yeah.
It's real people.
No, it's real.
It's not polished. It's not It's not.
It's not Joel Osteen.
It's not Joel
like
Osteen. It's not like a seeker sensitive. It's real.
Yeah.
And so she starts taking me into the homes of some of the kids there that are my friends now at this point. So I remember being 10 or 11 years old. We have this little raggedy rundown van, and so out in up north of Ohio, there's some really nice trailer parks.
Oh yeah.
There's places that like you can. That's people's summer home.
Oh yeah.
This wasn't that.
Yeah.
Trailer home.
No.
We get to this spot. It's bricks and cinder blocks and stuff. These trailers that are caving in the middle. So she's walking me in as a child into some of the homes of my friends, and she walks in. She's like, "Here, help me get the socks and shoes on." Like little 3 and 4 year olds, while Mom's strung out on the couch from the night before. Mom knocks on the door and just walks in. "Hey, it's Pastor Judy. I'm here to hang out with your kids. Take them over to Saturday church for the kids." And so we start filling up these vans, and all of a sudden, like, I'm seeing a whole new world. And little did I know that my mom could see herself in the woman that's on the couch, because she had been through.
She was that person at some point.
Right, maybe not that exact scenario.
Yeah.
But she knew what it was like to grow up at times being a single mother when Dad may have been in and out of the house. She knew what it was like. So she was all in. She's like, you know what? If we don't do something about this, no one else will. That was kind of her mantra. And so me being 10 years old, I'm helping these little 3 and 4 year olds get their boots on for the winter and getting them into the church. We'd occasionally get like $1,000 grant here or there. That was like, holy cow, we can help so much, like get food for kids. And like at the time that was like insane, because this church didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. It had been there for over 100 years. Building's paid off, it's fallen apart, but
it's still there.
Still there. So we did a lot of good, showed a lot of love, and was really a part of the community out there up until I was about 16 or 17 years old. And so my mom really taught me a lot while we were there at that church. And she taught me a lot about how to love the community very, very well. So fast forward, we're at another church. She moves to a different church where she just felt like it was kind of like her time to go. The person that was the senior pastor there left, felt like things weren't going very well. So she takes a youth ministry job over at another church. And I remember it just being the exact opposite of what I was used to. All of a sudden, you see the board members with their suit and tie. Everything's clean and polished.
It's not the same vibe.
Not the same vibe. Still great people.
Yeah.
Still a lot of love. Still great friends that I knew from the community there. But it was different.
Yeah.
It was different. And Mom knew it too. And so, as a part of just her DNA of who she is, that she learned from her mother, it's like, you have to take care of people. And so, whenever we would have these youth events and there was leftover food, she'd go out to the patio and she'd leave pizza boxes or whatever food was left, because she knew that the homeless would wander through and look for something. And so there would be times where she would leave food, water, notes for people that were homeless and that were sleeping on this little patio. And wasn't telling anyone.
Yeah.
She was just doing it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you don't need recognition to do the right thing.
And I remember one day, it's Sunday morning, all of a sudden I see my mom just like sobbing in church as she's like sprinting out to her car. And that's not her. She's like strong,
Stonewall, man.
Matriarch. Her mother was like, she used to just like beat the crap out of my papa because she could.
That's what my grandma did. Yeah.
He'd come home drunk from the bar. She'd pick him up, punch him in the face, knock him in the other room, and she's like, "You're gonna stop."
Yeah.
And he stopped drinking.
Yeah. Shut her down.
Because Granny, and she had a big chaw on her mouth.
Oh yeah.
A big.
A big. Jill Southern woman.
Oh yeah, old Southern woman.
Where was she from?
She was from Speedball, Tennessee.
Okay.
Speedball, Tennessee.
My grandparents were from Kentucky, so I know
yeah,
exactly what you're talking
exactly.
about. There's something different than Appalachian women do.
Yeah. So she died at 89 years old a few years ago with a dip in her mouth.
I love it, man.
And,
I love it.
Yeah. So she raised a bunch of us boys. She was, she was so involved with us. My older brother say all the time, like, she saved our lives. I don't know where we'd be without.
That's amazing.
But anyways, so mom grew up learning, like, you're a strong woman.
You're tough.
And so
yeah.
to see her like that, I'm like, I've seen her cry in life, not from anyone other than arguing with dad.
Yeah, when she's super frustrated, right?
Yeah. And so I chased her. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm like 16 or 17. She's like, nothing, don't worry about it. I'm like, no, what's wrong? She's like, well, a board member was just screaming at me in the hallway because I've been feeding the homeless again. And she said, I'm not going to stop. She's like, I'm not going to stop. And she said, if we don't help them, then who will?
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of
if not me, then who?
Exactly. If not me, then who will? And so that was like, my mom taught me a lot growing up. That was always like the biggest thing that I always take from her, was if we don't do it, then who will?
Yeah, I love that.
And that's the philosophy that I think if everyone would adopt, how different would our world be?
No, you're 100% right, man. You're 100% right. I got a couple things. I know you got more to the story, but
yeah.
I want to unpack some stuff in here.
Sure.
How old? So, what's the age gap between you and your next oldest brother?
That's a great question. So my very oldest brother was 16 years old when I was born.
Okay.
And my three brothers are all about a year and a half apart.
So mom and dad got sober before you were born?
Before I was born.
So that's crazy, because it's, for me, my parents both had me when they were 20.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had to unpack some stuff recently for me, because I'm the oldest. I'm very similar family structure. I have three brothers and a little sister, but I'm the oldest. So I'm on the flip side. And so for me, like, knowing that my parents, now that I know, my parents were literally growing up with me.
Sure, they were children.
Yeah, I'm 30 and I just had my first kid, man. Like, it's different. Like, if I'd had a kid when I was 20, like, I probably would have screwed up the kid too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you'd have a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I'd have a 10-year-old today. Like, I put that in reference. Like, I think my parents were done having kids by the time they were 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, for me, it's like, holy moly. You know, when you think about it in full perspective. So, I get exactly what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
We become different people as we go through different seasons of life.
Sure.
You're not I'm a big statistics and analytics and, like, back-end guy.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically, your body regenerates itself every 5 years. So, in theory, you are a completely different person in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And to have three of those people displaced from the time that your brother was born until you were born, yeah, you got a completely different version of those people. You know? It's wild, man.
Absolutely.
And for them to be saved is just amazing, you know, and that just helps. You know, it's icing on the cake.
It does. Church does a lot of bad.
Yeah.
Let's be open and honest.
Church is the building, not the people.
Yeah. Yep. So.
But sometimes the people that are in the pews, and this isn't for all churches, but they can be part of the problem, most of the problem.
Yeah. Yep. Churches are imperfect people trying to do the best they can with what they got.
Yep.
And for us to act like we're all going to be perfect is false. For us to act like our pastor is going to be perfect is false.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, and for my parents, a lot of it was like 1 degree at a time.
Yeah.
1 degree over the course of.
I think the book's on this shelf. It's not anymore. I gave it away. There's a book by Ed Milet called The Power of One More.
Oh, okay.
And it comes from the Alcoholics Principle. Just don't quit one more day. Just get better 1% more a day. Raise the temperature in the room 1 more degree a day. Mm-hmm. So I love that, because if we try to go, it's like if we're in my office here, right? And if I try to go change the temperature to 95 degrees and I expect it to just be 95 right now, it's not going to be. Right? And that AC or that whatever, let's say it's the wintertime for that example, that furnace is going to have a hard time catching up. Mm-hmm. But if I just go 1 degree every day, I'll get to 95. It just may not be the speed I want, but everything happens in God's time, not my time.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's where people often get disdained.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, life's about progress.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta make progress. Hiccups, roadblocks are gonna be there. We all make mistakes, but it's what do you do with those mistakes and those roadblocks that makes you who you are.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So, mom's at the church.
Yep.
How long did she stay there after that incident?
She was there for quite a while. She wasn't the type to give up. They were paying her like close to nothing. Like it was probably like 6 or 7, 8 grand a year. So I mean,
so it was like almost a volunteer position. Basically.
She was full time, but it was basically a volunteer position. Like I think it was technically like a housing stipend, so it would be non-taxed or taxed less, so that they could spread that just a little further. But it was pretty much close to nothing.
And she's giving full-time effort for part-time.
More than full-time effort.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Sounds like she's not someone that goes into something half-assed.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly who she is.
Yeah. I love it, man. So, fast forward, how old are you today?
I'm 29.
Okay, so you're younger than me. I think we've talked about that. When will you be 30?
I'll be 30. April I turned 29.
Okay, so you're about
10 months.
Yeah, you're almost the same age as my little brother. So I know the time frame too. Like that's always good to know too. Like if we think about the perspective, because like let's say the 40-year-old sitting in front of me, like the drugs were different back in the the whole experience is gonna be different for a 40-year-old than a 29-year-old. So it's good for a perspective just to kind of have those timelines on things and just kind of know where things wrapped up. And yeah, I mean kudos to your parents for stepping up and doing that, and then good for your brothers for digging themselves out of the mud.
Yeah, they've made so much progress over their lives too.
Yeah,
so,
I'm proud of them.
Still hiccups here and there, but I come from a family that's you guys roofing. I come from a family of tradesmen, so everyone's gone into the trades. When I turned 17 years old, 17 or 18, Dad walked into my room one day upset, which was a common theme growing up. and like, son, you're 18 years old now. Got a tool belt here, or you can go to college. My back hurts. I took the tool belt. I recommend you go to college. Which one are you going to take? Decide right now. And I'm like rubbing my eyes.
You're trying to figure out what's going on.
I've been playing Halo 3 all night.
I love it.
I think I want to go to college, Dad. He's like, well, you better figure it out then. And then slam the door. I don't even know why he was mad. Like I think it was summertime.
Just a rough day.
No, he just woke up that day. And I'm like, huh.
So I should have this conversation with Chris before I go to work.
He's like, yeah, you know what? He's like, I'm pissed. For no reason at all.
I'm mad at him.
Because my back hurts.
Yeah. I'm mad at him for my back.
Yep. And so he entered the trades as soon as he hit 18 years old in the Carpenters Union. My brothers all followed similar routes, Carpenters Union. One brother went into like the mining union, so he was
doing salt mine aggregate. Okay.
So limestone.
Up at Hyper?
He was there for a minute. He was also at like Lafarge.
Okay.
Yeah, so he did that for quite a while until his back and knees gave out, and so everyone in my family is basically tradesmen. My cousins that stayed with us went in like HVAC route, and so everything. Brother-in-law's an electrician, so I was the first one in my family to go off to college.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Mom, well, I say that. Mom did her associates, so I was the first one to get a bachelor's, first one to do a master's degree.
So I think that too, though, like if we look at that and dissect that, having that blue collar background, and then going into somewhat of a white collar. I mean, I know there's a lot of getting your hands dirty with what you're doing, but it's a white collar field to a degree. It really, I think, because I'm similar. I don't have a business degree by any means. I have a teaching degree that I don't use today. I was one of the first people. I think I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and it helps because you're willing to do the hard stuff.
Yeah.
You're not afraid to roll your sleeves up and do the stuff that you don't really necessarily is not on your job title. Because I know in my family, I grew up in very similar. My dad was a roofer reciter most of his life, and like I was on scaffolding at like 12.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah, like you just did what you had to do, and
the barn needs a new roof.
Yep.
Get out of bed.
You ain't hired somebody.
All hands on deck. Sometimes felt like an Amish family. Everyone's on the roof.
Yeah. So, but in that, you get that. The one thing that we do around here that's, I don't know if it's different per se, but I don't play with not my job. Just because your role says marketing doesn't mean that you're only stuck to marketing.
Yeah.
Like if we need help answering the phones that day, you're answering the phones. Like it's just not. It's not in our DNA. It's not who we are as people.
Yeah.
So I think that plays over really well into what you're doing today.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about it's the Campbell Christian Community Center, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So what we do is we're a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. And we focus primarily with kids and young families. So our mission is to create safe spaces for children to learn and grow while being surrounded by caring adults.
Okay.
So we do that through after-school programming, through summer programming. We have a small food bank. While we were sitting here, my watch has been going nuts. I have a mom calling me about some problem that her kid's probably in. But anyways, so we work really closely with kids and families within downtown Sandusky.
Okay.
So if you look at downtown Sandusky, you've probably seen the streets before. How crazy? Have you seen how crazy the streets are?
I own a rental on McDonald's, so
I
know
so
the
we're
whole layout.
Yeah,
it's
so
jacked up.
Yeah, so it's all triangles. And it's all five-way.
Someone thought they were being cute when they put that together.
Exactly. So back when Sandusky was basically laid out, they put these schools as community schools. The idea was that they would be close enough for every kid to walk to. They were built in 1885, 1865, that timeline. Horses.
Yeah, exactly.
So kids walked to school. So they put these buildings in and then kind of built the city kind of around them. So that's why when you go to the schools, there's so many houses packed in so tightly.
Okay.
It's because they were trying to get as many people as close to the schools as possible. So we're in one of those old community schools. So the old Campbell School.
Okay.
That most of Sandusky went to K through 6th at. So the school closed down about 2004. So most people, even around our age, would have went to school there.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so we're in the old Campbell School. We're faith-based, so we're Christian, and we are a community center. So that's our name. I get upset sometimes in Sandusky when I hear like all of these names of businesses of like how many Firelands and Great Lakes are there.
I know. Yeah, it's
like,
crazy.
just have your name and have it be what you do.
Keep it simple, man.
Yeah, exactly. So Campbell Christian Community Center.
We're at the Campbell Building. We're a Christian community center.
And if you don't know where the school is, we're as far north on Campbell Street as you can get. We're like
how much easier? Yeah.
Last addresses. But so basically, what we do. So when you look at Campbell Community, when you look at Campbell Community, if you were to draw a little triangle around there, that's about two blocks. So you have Hayes Ave. You have Campbell and Columbus. We're right in the middle of those. We're 1 block from the hospital I was born in, Firelands.
Yep.
So I can see where I was born from where I work, which is super cool.
Yeah.
I'm in the community that I was born in. But if you draw a little triangle there, that's the bulk of where our kids come from. Many of our families that live within there may not have transportation. Maybe it's a single mom or single dad or grandparents or aunt and uncles. So we have a little triangle that's Hayes and Campbell and Tyler. If you pinpoint us and go out 5 to 6 blocks from there, in Sandusky it takes like 1 minute to walk a block. Super quick.
Yeah, they're very tight.
So when I draw, and we do have this drawn up, I can show you when we're done here.
Yeah.
If I draw a square around us that's 5 to 6 blocks around us, it takes 5 minutes to walk to any house from the center. There's 6,500 people that live within that radius of us. Sandusky proper has 24 to 25,000 people. So a quarter of Sandusky lives within a 5-minute walk from where I'm at. I live within that square.
Okay.
So does our program director. We're a staff of 2. We think it's important to live in the community that you serve. So when we don't we're a social service agency, but we don't have clients. We have neighbors because we
love it.
live
I
in
love
the
it.
neighborhood. So if you were to do the demographics research of our community, that sort of 5-block radius, with some small exceptions of small communities in Sandusky, we're the youngest community. Poverty guidelines say we're the poorest or tied for the poorest within Sandusky and the densest population. So we've got lots of young families
Yep.
that are low income that are all very condensed into one spot. So we're right where we're supposed to be.
Exactly. 'Cause there's no
Need-wise.
such thing as coincidence.
There's no such thing as coincidence. And going back to what my mother said, if we're not going to be there for people, then who will?
Yeah.
So when I saw my mom growing up doing those things for the community for basically nothing. She wasn't making a paycheck at the first church she was at. The second one, she wasn't hardly making anything. She was doing it because that's what we're supposed to do.
From a place of compassion, rather
From a
than-
place of compassion. And so it was like all the time that, Dad being in a trades position where he was helping out people. Within the
serving
community.
people. Yeah.
Serving people. Sometimes Mom drove him nuts of, hey, help me go hang this door, as if she was the one that was going to hang the door.
Yeah. Help is a loose term.
Help us loose term. She was like the foreman.
But that's my wife. My wife
Yeah.
does.
But that's what we do at the Campbell Christian Community Center. So we do free after-school programming. We do free summer programming. We have a little food bank. So primarily working with kids, all within walking distance. We don't have a van or anything. Everyone walks to our programs. Being in that spot, we don't advertise that we have a food bank because it's pretty much just a kids' food bank.
Yeah, of course.
So nobody knows that. This is probably going to be the most people that ever hear about that, other than kids that live within the community. They come up, they knock on our big steel door. There's a little eye hole through it. So when we look out there and there's someone knocking and we can't see someone, we know it's
the right person.
We know
right?
it's one of the kids. And so we open the door and there's usually a group of kids like, hey, we're hungry, or hey, there's no food at home. Can we have something? And so we always have businesses come in and help us supply snack bags for kids. So at any time we have between 200 to 400 little snack bags that are tied up with 5 to 6 snacks for kids that they can take home and microwave or make for themselves, make for a younger sibling. Or if we know that there's a single mom over the summer and we walk by the house and all of the neighborhood kids are at her house, we say, call her up, send her a text, say, hey, there's a lot of kids at your place. Do you guys need some chicken for the freezer? Do you need some hot dogs?
Something, yeah.
And so most of the time she's like, yeah, it's the end of the month, all my stamps are dried up. That would actually be great. Because in every community, my grandmother was that for a lot of people.
That's how our house was, man. That's where everybody came to hang out, eat. I get it. It's funny how this whole story comes full circle. I don't know if you've thought about that, but just the whole, it comes back to your roots and who you are in your DNA.
Yeah.
That's what's most wild to me. How did you get this position?
That's a great question. So when I was in college, I went and studied to be a pastor, was what I initially wanted to do. And kind of midway through, I had this crisis where I was like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do exactly what I want to do if I only study that. So I knew that I had to add in some business classes, add in some Spanish classes. I wasn't sure long-term wise where I was going to be.
Some real mission work or something like that?
So my wife and I met on a missions trip where we went to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. There was a lot of Guyanese immigrants that were there. I wouldn't say that they were refugees as much as just low-income immigrants that had just got there trying to figure out what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And so we went there, we helped out for a little bit, and we met each other on this trip. 2 weeks later, we start dating. 2 weeks after that, her and I are, because it's now getting into summertime, it was the end of the semester, we're moving back to Sandusky.
Oh, she from Sandusky too?
No, not from Sandusky.
Okay.
So we dated for 2 weeks, and then she took a job. Her and I both took a job working at a church in town. Her working with girls in the youth group, me working with boys in the youth group. And so it was basically as soon as we started dating, we started working with teens and youth. One of the things that we did during that summer internship was we gathered up about 100 teenagers all from around Ohio to do volunteer projects in downtown Sandusky.
Okay.
So the center was one of those that we took teenagers to. So we were about 19 years old, so it was about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago. The center was one of them. New Day Family Resource Center, Crossroads, homeless shelter, and a few other places where we were just taking teens all over the place to get these church kids to be a part of the community and help do positive things. It was 10 days long, which is a long time.
Oh yeah.
To oversee junior high and teenage.
That's a lot, man. I used to coach high school wrestling, high school and junior high wrestling, man.
Yeah, and wrestlers are a different breed too.
They are too, man.
Yeah, they're always eating crayons when you're not looking too.
Basically Marines. There are quite a few go in the Marine Corps.
I grew up in a family of wrestlers. I wrestle most days of the week.
I was gonna ask you because I know your background, but I want to. So you guys were doing this outreach stuff, and then hit it off, and
yeah. So the center was one of those spots. So to make a very long story short, my wife and I, we lived in Costa Rica for about 4 months. We worked at an orphanage out there. And then that led us to, when we graduating college, we went out to Indianapolis. We worked at a social service agency that had an immigration center, after school and summer programs. We were out there for 2 years, went out to Austin. I worked as a high school teacher in a jail/prison and juvenile facility.
Okay.
So I was a high school GED teacher out there. She has a background in early childhood education as well as working with special needs students. So we were out in Austin until COVID kicked us back home.
Yeah.
Unpromptedly. So when we were on our way back home because of COVID, saw that the center was looking to hire somebody, and my wife and I were like, so which one of us is going to apply for this? Because we loved helping out there.
Yeah, you both loved the place.
Yeah, so that would have, at that point it's like, okay, yeah, we've been there like 6 years prior, and now here we are about 4 years later.
So did you both apply?
I applied because she was still able to keep her remote job when we came back from Texas.
Okay, so it just made more logical sense.
It made more logical sense. But I'll tell you what, my wife is a saint of a woman. She works at Townsend Community School, which is like a dropout prevention school.
I think I've heard of it.
So they primarily get students from all over Ohio, from Willard, Fremont, Norwalk, Sandusky, all over the place. I don't know if they have anyone from Mansfield, but
I'm sure they do.
They may, but they get kids bused up to them that are basically that's their last stop.
You got one more chance.
You got one more chance, and so they do education a little bit differently, where it's a little more free flowing for them. It's like, these are the credits you have to get. You have to pass these tests. Pass these tests, you're done. Doesn't matter necessarily how many.
Let's figure out how we get it done.
Yep, pass these tests, and education's in your hands because it isn't working when it's in your teacher's hands. And for a lot of kids, that's what they need.
Yeah.
And she has a lot of students that are 16, 17 years old that have babies. So like
makes it even harder.
And so she runs the testing facility. And so yesterday she has a student who's so that she was like 17 years old, and she has a 2-year-old. And so she's in the testing center. My wife runs the testing center, and she's holding this.
Your wife is?
Yeah, she's holding the baby for one of her students. So she's a saint of a woman. So
yeah.
She works there, and then she also volunteers with us over at the center.
Okay.
We're a staff of 2. So if you look at ratios, adult to kids, of how many kids we can handle, about 20 to 25.
At a time, yeah,
at a time. And the need is far greater.
Of course. Yeah, you have 6,500 people. I mean, we think half of those are kids.
Yeah, a lot of them are kids. So unfortunately, we have to turn a lot of kids away. We have kids knocking on the door almost every day. Like, hey, can I come to programs? Like, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't. If you're hungry, I can give you food, but that's all that I can do. So she volunteers to help out. We have a lot of volunteers that help us out on a weekly basis. We have about 30 to 40 different volunteers that come in.
That's amazing.
Because we do a hot meal every night for kids.
Okay.
And then we also help them with homework. And then if they don't have homework, then we help them read. A lot of them come in pretty far behind.
Yep.
So a lot of times we're trying to play catch up. I love Sandusky. I'm a big supporter of Sandusky City Schools. They're very far behind though.
Yeah, and that's with my education background. That's something that I've struggled with, is like, how do we help to change that stuff without going to the state level to try to change the curriculums? Because the problem is it's a lot of times the teachers aren't necessarily the problem. It's that their hands are tied with what they're doing because we're trying to judge. Dr. John Maxwell says it best. You can't send your ducks to eagle school and expect them to fly like eagles.
Yeah.
Like you have to. It's the same exact analogy of you can't judge a fish by its ability to run. Like
you
cannot like. if people truly understand how people learn, there's really 5 different categories that it falls into, and we're teaching 1 or 2 maybe.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what probably my biggest frustration with our current education system is we're not utilizing that to the best of our ability. Too oftentimes we're just wanting to medicate kids and say, oh, you got ADHD. No, he's a kinetic learner and he can't sit still, which is a whole different can of worms. And if we were to just embrace that, he'll learn just fine. Or they're ahead of the schedule. They're not grasping what you're teaching because it's not engaging to them, and then that's a whole other problem. I did want to ask, with what you work with, as being impoverished, single-parent households, things of that nature, what, as a society, can we do different to help to prevent that?
It's a great question.
Or what are your feelings? At the end of the day, it's your opinion, right?
Yes, it's my opinion. I would say in terms of preventing it, there's very little we can do unless we make it personal. So we don't say, man, those neighborhood kids. We say, my neighbors.
Yes.
How can I be there for
Take
them?
ownership.
When you look at the structure of a lot of homes, it used to be that everyone had a front porch so they could sit out, talk to their neighbors across the street. At some point, most of those moved to a backyard, and so now homes, a little less now, but there was a time where there was no front porches, so that you could disconnect from community.
Yeah.
So the solution, I think, is to reconnect with our community.
Love it.
So do what we can when you see a neighborhood kid who lives down the street from you, and maybe you know that they're going through it, maybe you know that they're behind in school, or maybe you don't know them. Maybe you just need to go invite their parent over for dinner. Invite them to a cookout.
Yeah.
If you don't want people coming into your house, not everyone wants that. Get the grill out. Make hot dogs.
Offer to come over and make them dinner.
Get the cornhole boards out, put them in the front yard. Say, hey, we need one more.
Yeah.
We got 3 of us, we need one more person to play. But I would say make it personal.
No, I love that. I love that. What I do love too that you guys are doing is connecting with the kids first.
Yeah.
Right? Because unfortunately, and this isn't a knock at any parents out there or anything like that, but unfortunately most of us are already set in our ways and broken, much like we talked about with your parents at the beginning of the episode, right? They were set in their ways. They were who they were. And if we go back to the psychology behind it and why you're different than your brothers especially, because that's what it sounds like was the biggest stress point for your brothers. They were the ones like, that little bastard, all that stuff, right? All of our developmental ages happen from the age of 4 when we start to get cognitive recognition up until we're 9. So by the time we're 9, we're already developed as who we're going to be as people, at least within our personalities. Not to say that we can't change and become better people much like your parents did and stuff like that. But I think that we have to get back to educating kids on, our society nowadays is a mess. I mean, just for lack of a better term, it's just a mess. We've gone away from, not to get too political, but we've gone away from male-female constructs in a marriage and a household. And it's not that I don't think that women can be on equal as men, but we're literally having a Christian conversation, so I think I have no problem saying this. When God created Adam and Eve, He created a counterpart. He didn't create an equal. And it sounds like for your wife, just much like mine, she's your better half. She's better than you are in a lot of things. Last time I checked, I've got a 1-month-old at home. I can't breastfeed my daughter. I can't. But I can go out and hunt and gather and provide because it's who it is in my DNA. So I think the other thing too is just like connecting with those kids and building that foundation within them that what we have as humans and what we can build inside of a marriage and how we can respect ourselves and respect others and how we can love one another, much like you guys felt in that church. I spent a short-term mission in Africa this past fall. The poorest people I've ever been around.
What part of Africa?
We were in Uganda.
Okay.
In Tembe. We flew into Tembe. We were outside of Tembe, nonetheless. But literally the poorest people you've ever met in your life. Like at 200, or I think it was, you could get a house servant for $40 a month, and if you let them live in, that's good money in U.S. dollars. And I've been to Latin America. I've been down there. Like those people are still much better off than the people that are in Africa. But the happiest people you've ever met. And don't get me wrong, there's single mothers over there. That still runs rampant within those societies. Because I think if we go back to who we are as people and what our DNA says is, as men, yes, we're hunters and gatherers, but we're also nomads more by trade than women are, right? If we want to move. We want to chase the next best thing or whatever, especially for alphas. But they're still the happiest people. That can be done here. But we get too much in, I don't have the newest iPhone, I'm not wearing the nicest shoes, I'm not wearing I'm trying to keep up with the Joneses too much to worry about what I have is pretty damn good.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty damn good. Like, you won the genetic lottery alone by being born in America. Hands down. We all did. We all did. And I thank God every day. Mm-hmm. I thank God every day that I was born here. But we are given so much more than we take blessings for. One of my favorite things I've ever heard is, if you thank God yesterday for everything that you had, and He took everything away that you weren't thankful for, how much would you have today? We don't have that mentality. We have the mentality of, I don't have the newest iPhone. Mm-hmm. My car's not nice enough. We don't have a mentality of, I'm thankful I have a car. I'm thankful I have a phone.
Yeah.
iPhone or not, right? We don't run it that way. And I think that's part of the problem too, is like we're just so worried about the rest of society instead of just being where we are.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is we live in a world where we have a lot of people that say, like, I'm not religious, or I'm not spiritual. I've studied a lot of religions. There was a time where I was an atheist. But at the end of the day, we all show allegiance to something.
Yes.
And my contention is, whatever we show our allegiance to becomes our God. Whether that's a real spiritual entity or not, it doesn't matter. So for most people that live within North America, other continents as well, but North America, consumerism is probably the biggest God. Yeah. There's consumerism, maybe it's you're so focused on just yourself. Individualism, I would say, probably more than anything, because I'm too worried about me instead of we. Yep, and so much of that gets so intertwined, and unfortunately, we can't really untangle who we are as a person away from what we believe spiritually.
Yes.
Even if you don't believe, in my mind, everything's spiritual, especially what we spend our finances on.
Yes.
The thing that we put our finances toward, the thing that we put our time toward, the thing that we put our thoughts before we go to bed toward is the thing that we show our biggest allegiance or allegiances to.
Well, and I like to look at it as I'm voting, right?
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of what we have here, and why I genuinely think this is still the best country regardless of who's in office, none of that crap, all that aside, is because capitalism shows who is the true winner if it's done properly, right? Mm-hmm. We will vote with our money, we'll vote with our time, we'll vote with our allegiances, we'll vote with where we go to church, we will vote with what we buy. All that stuff, we're voting. We're voting with those resources we have, and those finite resources we have. For a lot of us, money is finite. The folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, you get to vote with that money at the end of the day, right? But like you said, it's where your allegiance lies. I had a friend ask me one time, and I'll ask you the same question, because this was really interesting to me, what I came up with. So I want to kind of know where you're at. Everyone wants to be led.
Do I think that everybody wants to be led?
Yeah, from a leadership standpoint, like, do we all need a leader?
I would say that whether we want to or not, we are captivated and led by something, whether it's a person or not.
Oh, I like that. Because we could be led by money, we could be led by stuff,
people,
the next best thing, whatever. Yeah, no, he asked me that, and I said, no, I do think that everyone wants to be led. That was my answer. I said, because I think that the most intelligent and successful people that I know tend to seek God for guidance or some kind of spirituality. Because I'm on the same page as you, man. I think our God's too just to say that if you lived a good life as a Jew, you can't get into heaven. Like, that to me just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Granted, I know what my Bible says. If anybody wants to come at me for that, I get what my Bible says. But if no one was ever exposed to that, never had the opportunity, how fair is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, getting into like Bible interpretation, it would be tough to say that God would go back on the promises that he made to the Jewish people.
In the Old Testament.
Yeah, so I mean...
Yeah, and the same thing is to be said with the Islamic faith. I don't think that all Islamic... Because we've already kind of touched on this. The Christian faith has a lot of bad people too.
Every
religion has a little sect, because Johnstown was based on they drank the damn Kool-Aid in Johnstown based on what somebody thought they read in the Bible, right? Or crazy stuff that's happening out west within different churches and different sects, because I don't want them to come after me. I won't name them by name, but all those have come and stemmed from somebody thought they read something somewhere. David Koresh, the guy in Texas, the Waco shooting, same thing. He read something that he thought he was interpreting and then tried to call himself a Messiah, and it's just a whole different can of worms. So there's plenty of crazy in Christianity too.
Oh yeah, I would say, if we're to talk about the negative for a second, I would say probably the worst of any religion, I would say, usually revolves around some sort of religious fundamentalism.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is when people read something, strip it of its context, make it say something that they want it to say, and then act upon that without any insight from the community of believers that they're a part of.
Yep.
Not saying that there's not groups of people that will come to wrong conclusions together.
Which happens frequently.
But when you look at the Bible, when you look at the Quran, I don't think either of these were meant to be read in isolation.
No.
Well, for one, looking at the Bible, it's a collection of letters that was derived over thousands of years. Some letters, some historical books, some stories, some poems, some political cartoons, for lack of a better term. And we think that we can read them all literally in the same exact way, where it's like, no, like they were talking sometimes in secret code about Rome, and didn't want to get in trouble because if Rome read this, they would all get killed.
Yes.
But they were speaking in their own secret spy language.
It's almost like the Native Americans during World War II, the code talkers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing, right? Yeah, no, and that's probably one of my biggest beefs with Christians, in my opinion. And it's not that I necessarily want to beef with Christians, but like when we cherry pick parts of the Bible that are convenient for us at that moment in our life, and don't read all the context around it. And I just say this one thing. I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody recently who was going through a divorce, and close person to them said, "Are you sure you want to do that? You gotta go to hell." And you go, okay,
with no context.
With no context, right? Because one of my favorite things, and I've talked about this on the podcast a lot, but Toby Keith said it the best in my opinion. They asked him what his favorite verse in the Bible was. He goes, John 3:16, because it's the only one that matters. Whoever believes in him shall never perish. It doesn't say whoever believes in him. There's no asterisk there. It said whoever believes. That's the only thing that matters. If you're a Christian, that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day, is belief. Now, walking a good life, there's other things that go into that, but that's the key fundamental linchpin in the entire thing is a matter of belief. Praying that prayer, right? Making sure that you accepted Christ into your heart. If you want to go to some Old Testament stuff, because I ran it back when I had this conversation with this person, and I said, well, what about the woman at the well? When God sat next to the woman at the well and said, you've had 6 husbands, you're the 7th you're living, or when Jesus sat with the woman at the well and said, you've had 6 husbands, the man you're living with now is not your husband, I will still sit here with you. What about her? That wiped away all that. He put his belief in that woman at that moment. He said that I believe in you. You are okay. It is okay what you have done. Now, do I believe that adultery is okay? Do I believe that divorce is okay? I think that we should work on marriages more than we don't. We have a throwaway culture right now that we just throw things away because it's easier to just throw it away than it is and go find a new, what we think is the next best thing than work on what we already have. But in the instance where you just don't feel like you can do it anymore, to throw that on someone at their darkest moment, I think is very, very crappy, for lack of a better term.
I think, so we're talking about community, talking about presence around other people. I think listening's a very lost skill. I think it's a very lost skill. And this is something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
That I struggle with where, I've only been married for 6 years.
Kudos to you guys, man. That's good, though.
But I've found that oftentimes when my wife tells me something about work about that needs done around the house, all these different things that oftentimes I need to open with the question of, are you wanting me to listen or do you want advice? And oftentimes she'll just say, I just want you to listen. I'm like, perfect.
That's all I need to do.
And as you ask that question, over time that question doesn't really need to be asked as much.
Yeah, just let you know.
When you see how things are going, so you know what, I think I need to just listen a little more.
That's
because
good.
if she wants advice, she'll ask for it.
Yeah. But is it something too that you've noticed, like, and this is just me just becoming more intentional. Do you have any kids?
We do not have any kids. We have a lot of kids, but none are
Okay.
ours.
No biological yet, though?
No.
Maybe in the near future. I won't grill you on that.
That's fine.
But I will notice when as soon as I got my daughter, and this is something that I preach to my team. We do team retreats every year, and I'm like, just be where your feet are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, along that listening line too oftentimes we'll get called on our phone on something, or we'll be left over from our day from work or whatever, instead of actually just, we're listening, but we're not listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going through the motions.
I'm very guilty of that.
And I think we all are, to a degree, right?
I'm very guilty of that. Where I'm someone who my wife says I go into boxes. Like I find a cardboard box, I climb inside of it, and then when I'm inside of that mental box, like, does not compute.
Checked out.
Checked out. And so a lot of times my wife she'll ask a question, she'll be like, in another room, she'll be like, hey, are you in a box right now? And I'll be like, yeah, give me a minute. Or I'll be like, no, or I'll be like, yeah, but I can come out of it.
That's beautiful. So you guys have found your own way to communicate.
We found our own way to communicate because she found out that there were times where she would start to enter into conversations that required even 40% competency, like of my attention.
She just wanted the attention
that I couldn't give in that time.
Yeah.
And especially when it's something that requires 80% of my attention, where it's a more serious topic, where I'd be like, is it urgent? She'd be like, oh no, it's not. The cat. Not something
yeah, whatever.
It was
right?
funny, or she got a picture of.
Yeah, she saw this funny TikTok.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff though, man. And I love how you said that you've got tons of kids but no kids. And I love that you guys have that heart about you. And I think that that's something that's beautiful about what you guys are doing up there. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that if more communities would grasp onto something like that, and like you said, if not me, then who?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think that's another thing that we have a problem with in this country. Is, the next person will handle it. Mm-hmm. You know, I see that in roofing all the time. I see where guys will just jack up someone's roof and get it okay or good enough. In the last 5 years, the next guy will handle it. It's like, really? Instead of just addressing the problem right now? I mean, the same symmetry could be said in so many things, but like,
yeah.
That's the thing is, like, I get so frustrated with the fact that people want to bitch about what's going on instead of just taking an initiative and a stance and say, I'm going to be the solution to this problem.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, we just donated our time to a local soapbox derby here.
Sure.
And we ruffled some feathers because they came in my office and they said, yeah, sometimes kids don't have the money to pay for this, that, the other. Well, we go, okay, that's taken care of. Like, we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
Because once again, we have a very big, if not me, then who mentality around here. Like, we hear something, we're going to take care of it. But then we're on top of that, we're like, it's kind of like with you guys. This is funny that we're having this conversation a week displaced. Or 5 days. This was just Saturday. And I said, my brother actually brought it up. He goes, so if they can't afford that, how are they feeding their kids?
Yeah.
And we went, yeah, that's a problem. Have you guys ever had anybody feed the racers? No, we've never had anybody do that. We got it. We made 200 hot dogs. Mm-hmm. We did our whole thing. Come to find out, if they're watching this, whatever, I don't really care. I won't name the business. We had some businesses that were upset because they lost out on business because of that. Our heart was not in the position of, let's take some money out of these guys' pockets. I'm a roofing company, dude. I don't sell hot dogs. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We came at it from an aspect of, we saw a need in the community. How can we help to fill that need?
There's kids showing up to learn about how to assemble a car and how it works.
And to run these things down the hill.
Have fun. Have some men and women invest in them.
Yes. And all they need is somebody to believe in them. Mm-hmm. You know, we had so many people come up to us. Nobody's ever done this for us. I think we passed out over, it was hot on Saturday. We passed out over like 300, 400 waters. Mm-hmm. And just once again, my team was there. We donated our time. We had a blast. And then you got people that are just too small-minded to not think about being part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. Because if we're not part of the solution, we're quite frankly part of the problem. Even if you're just a bystander in the issue, right? So I like that you guys have taken an initiative and go, yeah, these kids don't get meals. I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, they just don't eat.
Yeah.
We're going to feed them.
Or some people may say, well, like, what are they doing with their money? It's like, well, the fact that she smokes a cigarette sometimes doesn't make up the difference of them not being able to pay rent that month.
Yes.
Or them having some sort of predatory car loan that they didn't know that they were getting.
Yeah, you don't know all the circumstances.
Right.
And that's something I struggle with too, because I deal with that in my own head. And that's why I have a hard time helping out adults. Because I'll be frank with you, like, I see the way the world landscape is today from a business perspective, and maybe you do this too. You can literally go to frickin' McDonald's and split burgers and make $16, $17 an hour. And go get 3 of those jobs if that's what it takes. Because if it were me, that's what I would do. And I have a hard time putting myself in that box and saying, this is me. And this is what everyone else is going to do. But on the flip side of that, it always comes back to the conversation of kids are helpless.
Yeah.
Those kids can't go get a damn job. He's 7. What's he going to do? I mean, I had my first job at 7. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know.
Yeah, I mean, did custodial work with my grandmother. She was a custodian at the schools until she was 80 years old.
I love it.
Even after a hip replacement. She still had us boys there helping her out.
Trash cans, whatever it took. And she probably paid you $10 a day to do it or whatever.
Well, she cooked us dinner.
Oh, see, even better.
Yeah,
you got to eat.
it was way better.
But no, it's like, that's the thing though, is the kids, it's not the kid's fault. And even if the parent's a crappy parent, it's not the kid's fault. Like, I think that we have to take an ownership as a community, much like we're having with this conversation, and go, I'm going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I can berate that parent, tell them that they shouldn't have done this, that, or the other. We've all made decisions that we regret. We've all done things in our life that we're not proud of, happy of, some worse than others.
Yeah.
But the child didn't deserve it.
No. Kids have no control or power over 90% of the scenarios they're in.
Yeah. Their environment is not their responsibility. And quite frankly, I understand some people are just born into that cycle of poverty and don't know how to get out of it. And I get it. So then that's the next, that to me would be the next phase. But at the end of the day, as it sits today in phase 1, there's still too many damn kids going without meals.
Yeah.
Not having a father figure in their life. Not being able to experience life as a kid.
Yeah.
So let's work on changing them so the next generation can maybe be just that 1% better.
Yeah. So whenever kids come into the center, there's 2 big double doors with a bike rack right next to it. They ride their bike up there. I hand them a bike lock so it doesn't get stolen. I go throw it on there, and they bring me the key back, and I put it away. They grab a snack, and then either me or one of our volunteers will say, do you have homework today? If so, let's work on it. No? Great. Let's grab a book and read for the next 30 minutes before our next thing starts off. So they're getting one-on-one attention with an adult who cares about them. Again, our mission is to create safe spaces for children to learn and grow while being surrounded by caring adults. So we have these volunteers from just about every church in Sandusky you could think of that either help in the kitchen or help us work with the students themselves. So, we have this one kid who comes in, and he started, his older brother who aged out of our programs saw him walking toward us one day. I'm like, oh my gosh. It looks like this one student took off a part of his shoulder, dropped it, and it turned into a mini. It's like when they walked up, I'm like, I said, where did you find him? He's like, this is my little brother. I'm like, he looks just like
That's awesome,
like
man.
Me and my brothers all look alike. If you've seen one of us, you've seen all of us.
I love it.
We're all like some of us are hairier than each other.
There's slight variation. Difference in
I'm a
models.
little less hairy than the rest of them. But anyways, so this kid walks up and he's like, "Oh, this is my little brother," and he comes in kind of like sheepishly, and I'm like, "I'm glad you're here today." And that's what I tell every kid. As soon as they enter into the door, as I look in the face, "I'm glad you're here today." And for kids that have never heard that,
Positive affirmation.
or maybe they grew up similar to my older siblings, who maybe they grew up in a home where parents were teenagers. maybe them entering the world was tough news for the parents.
Yeah.
And maybe the kids know that.
Yeah.
A lot of kids...
They pick up on everything, man.
And so one of the things that I tell our volunteers when we do a training with them is I never want a kid to leave here thinking that they're a mistake. Because they may have other people in their lives
that are already
treat them
telling
that way.
Yeah.
So when kids come in, I say, I'm glad you're here today. I tell our volunteers, I say, when you see a kid, I want you to tell them, I'm glad you're here today. Studies show that it takes 7 positive relationships to get a child out of generational poverty. 7 positive relationships. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Let's say, when I think of like some people that invested in me growing up that like were real positive, that I knew that if
like somebody you can look up to.
If I needed $5, if I needed someone to coach my little league team or assistant or like step in, or who were those people? Maybe just a couple. So for a lot of students, they might think, well, my uncle's locked up, never met my mom, being raised by grandma. So our goal is that there's at least me, our program director Zach, and my wife. That's 3 right there. If I can get all of our volunteers that come in, that are there on a weekly basis, that see these kids, our neighbors, 1 time a week, and they can just continue to be that.
Plant them seeds,
I don't just want 7.
No.
I want to have 17.
Be exceptional.
Yeah, so if 7 is like the baseline to help get a child from instability to stability, what does 20 do?
Yeah.
Holy crap. And that's where it goes back to, it has to be personal. So when I first started at the center, we have some kids that I kind of like refer to my day 1 kids, where when I started there, it was right out of the previous executive director leaving. It was December of 2020 when I started there.
So right off of COVID.
So when I started there, schools were closed. They had opened up for like September, and then as fall break kind of started,
we're
closed out. And they're like, sickness always goes around, so we're closed through December. So the first board meeting that I had in January was, do we open our programs or not? And so it was a unanimous yes. Schools opened up, we were going to follow whatever the school did. When they're open, we're open. When they're closed, we're closed. So I have some day 1 kids, and there's not many of those because we were such a tight ship then. I was the only employee.
Yeah, resources are thin.
Yep, and there still was a lot of community distrust. So one of our day 1 kids, it's 2 brothers, and so I'm meeting them, talking to them, getting some trouble, and call up mom because we don't have many problems like this, but one of the kids said to a girl that she looked like a stripper. And so he's in 1st grade. He doesn't
really know what he's saying.
He heard it in a song.
Yeah.
And so call mom in. There's all this stuff going on, and so I start to build this relationship with mom. Mom's been in prison. She's battled alcohol addictions, meth addictions. Sometimes she has custody of kids. Sometimes one of 4 of the different dads in the scenario have the kids, or grandmother who's addicted to crack has the kids, or sometimes they're just staying with
wherever they got a warm place to stay.
Yeah. So these are like some of my day 1 kids, and so the kids will every once in a while give me a call like, hey, will you come to my basketball game? Will you come see what's going on? I get a call one night. It's 11 o'clock at night, and so my wife and I are at home doing our thing. Our phones are in another room. I notice like, I missed a couple of calls. Don't really think too much of it. Try calling back, don't get anything. A week goes by, haven't been able to get a hold of them, haven't seen the kids, and so we decided to start going through the glyph reports, start going through what sort of issues have been with the law. And so we found that mom had stabbed the man that was in the house, boyfriend / fiance. And so that the kids all went to different next of kin all over the state. And they were calling my wife and I to see if, because they didn't know who else to call. And so we missed the call, which isn't something that's like, I don't like.
You don't lose sleep over it,
but
it still hurts.
It still hurts when it's like, man. And so mom, she 30 days later, she's able to make some calls, and she's like, Mr. Chris, will you reach out to my kids? I'm not able to be with them. I don't know if I'll ever get custody of them, but will you just check in on them? And so one's in Cleveland, one's in Toledo, one kid's in Sandusky. So just trying to keep tabs on everything going through a family member who used to also be a part of programs. So fast forward a little while, mom gets out of recovery program, gets out of jail, starts to do well for herself, and all of a sudden the boys are back in town, and I'm able to say, hey, you know what, I know it's a Sunday or a Saturday and we're closed, can I take you to church with me? And then we'll go to the center and play some basketball afterwards. And so I end up being able to take some of these boys to church camp with me just to spend time with them.
Yeah.
Like, there's good things that happens at church camp and all that. But the thing I was most excited about was that I got to fish right next to them.
Yeah.
Services were great. There were some good sinner's prayers that may have been said with intentions or not. I don't really know. But at the end of the day, I got to sit next to some of these students, eat dinner with them, fish with them. And so for the next about a year and a half, they were with me at church every single Sunday. Every single Sunday. You know, and then afterwards they'd go over to my parents' house, swim in the pool. Kids look nothing like my wife and I. They'd go over there, hang out with us, hang out with my nieces and nephews, like part of the family.
It's amazing, man.
And now, like, I was over at Cedar Point grabbing dinner the other day, and my wife and I are like, oh my gosh, is that one of the boys? You know, he's 14 or 15 years old now. He's working a job, and so, you know, we see out of the corner of our eye he's there. You know, girls are coming up and he's like throwing mac and cheese on their plate, kind of like
trying to do the cool thing at 14.
Kind of look as cool with like one AirPod in his ear, and then like looking tough. I'm like, oh my gosh, like he looks like a full-grown man now. And we get up there and as soon as he saw us, like he looked like a kid again. Like he smiled and just like, oh my gosh, you guys are here. It's so good to see you. And I'm like, so you still got my number? He's like, yeah. I'm like, give me a text. Like, shoot me a text sometime. Let's hang out one of these days. He's like, all right, I'll do that. And so right when I was walking in here, I was getting a call from one of them that I haven't really talked to in a little while.
That's amazing, man.
Just because moves happen, they're all over the place. But sorry for that tangent.
No, dude, that's a super cool story, and I think it relates really well back to like what you guys are doing. Because my next question was like, have you had any kids age out and then come back to volunteer yet?
Yeah. So so our programs are primarily K through 6. We do have like a MOPS group / preschooler infant program where moms can come in, get some diapers, wipes. My program director and I will make them like a really good breakfast.
Yeah.
And then we have some social workers, some teachers, and some different organizations come in to give resources for them. And we just hang out and have a good time. We do have our K through 6 programs, which is the bulk of what we do.
Yeah, of course.
When a kid gets into 6th grade, they then qualify for our teen program as well. That's only 1 day a week. So it's like if you're in 6th grade, you can come to our K through 6 programs and you can start kind of being like weaned.
Start transitioning, yeah.
And so once they hit that age, you know, we're like, okay, you're not a teen yet, you're a part of the teen program, you're still part of the K through 6. Next year when you're in 7th grade, if you do well, don't cause any problems, you're not swearing, you're not saying inappropriate things, you might get asked to volunteer with us.
Okay, that's
and
super
when they do, they get one of our shirts with the center on it. It'll say Mr. or Miss first name on it, so all the other kids know that they're a teen. And I say we didn't do that intentionally. The person who was doing our shirts
just happened to do it.
And it was like, that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
And so so we do have some students that come back. And so when I talked about that one little kindergartner who looked like he fell off of his brother, you know, he came because his brother was coming to volunteer.
That's super cool, man.
And so when kids age out, they get to then give back to younger kids in the community. Most of them siblings, cousins, neighbors.
Yeah, it's people they know. It's their neighbors, literally.
Yeah, and so the idea is, you know, when I say we're a community center, it's like we're trying to build community.
Real community.
We're not just saying like, yeah, we're in a community. It's like, no, like we want to be like the leaders in building the community.
I love it, dude. I love it. I love your life's mission, man, because even though I haven't directly asked you, I know what it is. Like, it's just to create impact. And you haven't heard me talk at BNI, but anytime I get on stage, I tell people, my goal is to change one life. Mm-hmm. When I talk anytime, like, that's the goal with this podcast, it's the goal with everything we do. Mm-hmm. It's change one life. If I try to change every life that I come in contact with, like, bro, that gets exhausting. Like, not to say you can't do it, but like it's not feasible, right? It's where we started with the podcast, really. Just that 1 degree better. If I can get one person just a little bit ahead, that's all that matters. And I like that you guys take the approach of, take 7, but let's do 14, let's do 21. Let's triple that, because 7's the average. So this kid might take 4.
Sure. He might have 5 at home.
Yeah.
He might only need 2.
Or he's got 2 great teachers in the classroom, mom and dad are still in the household, he's got 4. They're not in the best situation, but they're really trying to make an impact, right? He's got 4 already, he's ready, he's halfway there, we give him the other 3 as supplement, and he's good to go. Versus another kid, got 0, he's negative, because
he's at a deficit.
Yeah, he's at a deficit, he's operating at a deficit already, he needs 20, and we're gonna make sure we get as many of those ingrained in him as possible. And I love that mentality, because if we just all took that approach, Dr. John Maxwell calls it the elevator principle, either you're picking people up, or you're bringing them down. There's no in between. Life's an elevator, it's moving up and down. I call it the plus and minus. Either I'm giving pluses or I'm giving minuses.
Yeah.
That could be a smile at a gas station. That could be telling the lady at McDonald's that hands me my burger, have a blessed day. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. That's where we all too oftentimes get lost in the weeds. We have to have meaningful, intentional relationships with folks. A meaningful, intentional relationship just means that I'm giving you something positive to walk out of your day with. To get a little bit transparent on my part, I was suicidal in 2017-18, and if it were not for those people that were adding pluses to my life, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you right now.
Exactly.
Because we don't know, most people didn't know I was battling that stuff. Most people didn't know that all that was going on. I don't need to go in the full story on why, but we don't know that that mom just lost a baby.
Oh, yeah.
Or just lost their significant other, or not even that drastic, right? It could be something small. They just had a flat tire on the way to work, they're having a bad day. Just that small positive impact that we can make on folks, I think, makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
And we're ingrained as humans to want to, we want to have that community, we want to connect. And we think we have it in our pocket, but we don't. You need real human interaction to have community. It's so much easier to go and create impact when we actually just make face with people, shake hands, give hugs, give love.
Yeah. The
same thing with what your mom was doing in the churches. She was just spreading some love, man.
Yeah, exactly what she was doing.
That's all she was doing. So that's beautiful. Well, as we get towards the end here, I know we've gone for quite a while, man. I feel like we could sit here and talk for probably 2 or 3 more hours. But I'd like to open up the last couple minutes. If there's anything we haven't discussed that you want to talk about, this is your 2 minutes to shine, dog.
Yeah. So, love touching on the why. I think we covered that quite a bit. Kind of going into the what or the how. How do we do what we do at the center? So people ask me all the time, how do you guys afford to do what you do? I say, well, we don't get any government funding. We could, but there would be some strings attached that would be very difficult for us to keep doing things in the manner that we do them.
Absolutely.
So most of our funding comes from private businesses, from private donors, and from churches. Those are our our big 3, as well as we do every year get some funding from community foundations in the form of grants. But I would say, I'm pretty open and honest. We have an annual budget of between $140,000 to $180,000 a year, which for the amount of kids that we work with, that's a very low budget.
Thin peanut butter, man. Thin peanut butter.
We're operating with what we got. So, when I started here in 2020, found out that one of the donors that gave about 40% of our annual budget was disappearing. We're in the middle of COVID, an economic crisis. So the board says, well, you're 25 years old. No one else really wanted this job. We've got about 6 months operating budget, so figure it out. Good luck, and if we have to close our doors in 6 months, they didn't say that, but I knew that the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of an anonymous guy. I got a text hey, someone wants to come through and see what's going on. I think it'd be good. I'm like, okay, so I've never met any kids at the community center. This is, I think it was January 11th of 2021. Give this anonymous guy a tour. Tell him, you know what, this is where my heart's at and this is what I want to do. And he was all about it. At the end of the day, we're getting ready to walk on. Like, hey, thanks for coming through. Like, you're the first person I've given a tour to. Like, yeah, be expecting a $10,000 check in the mail. I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. And he's like, yeah, and there's plenty more where that came from.
That's amazing.
And so this is before I've interacted with any of the kids in the community, before I even knew what the heck was going on. I didn't even know where all of the keys on my key
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, there's good people out there.
There is.
And I also realized that I shouldn't live in like a mentality of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, I was like, you know what, if I can just do good for about 6 months here,
Cool. At least you did something.
I did something. I'm hireable.
I'm employable. My resume's all right.
Yeah, I can get a job somewhere else. And so he was, you know, a guy that like right off the bat, I'm like, you know what, let's freaking do this.
Yeah.
If
Lit that fire for you.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't know how much I needed that. Like how much that $10,000 helped the community, but how much it helped me.
It created a belief.
Yeah, exactly. Because I needed to believe in myself, and I don't know that I really did. I thought I had some good ideas. He was silly enough to believe them, but here we are, almost 4 years later. You know, he's been so consistent and generous to us. And we've had so many other people, businesses, churches give towards us. So between all of those businesses, churches, individuals, I would say that's probably about 80% of our budget comes from those sorts of private individuals or private groups.
It's amazing, man. Well, I think too, like, it's funny because we were just having a going away party for Jen, who's usually behind the cameras, and you may have heard me say this, maybe you didn't. And I told her, I said, my job as a leader is to believe in things that you don't believe in, you can do yourself. And to have somebody like that in your life, I guess what separates good from great. A good leader's like, yeah, you can do what you think you can do. A great leader's like, I think you can do this. And that guy was the leader in your life. He planted a seed and said, I got this. You're good. You know, and it's beautiful. And it goes back to the same thing, man. There's no such thing as coincidence.
Right.
God knew you needed that in that exact moment. And he's like, I got you. You're good, Chris.
Yeah.
You're going to figure this out, man. Another thing that I think I want to add to that maybe wraps that up. Dave Ramsey, I think, says the best. No one got to the end of their life and was resentful or had regrets about being too generous.
Right.
I've never given money and regretted it. It's just true. And I think that folks like that guy, folks like the churches, folks like the people who are supporting you guys today, their mentality is that. They're giving from a place of generosity, a place of knowing that you're doing well with the money. We're all servants of God's money at the end of the day. And I just get to be a steward for my household, for my business, whatever it may be. He'll take it all away tomorrow if he really wants to.
Yeah.
And while I've got it, I'm just going to try to do the best with it that I can.
Absolutely.
So I love it, man. It was really, really a good conversation. I think that folks are going to get something out of this.
Thanks for having me out.
I don't normally, no problem, man. We've done a few nonprofits here lately, and I don't normally do this. I don't do this with businesses. But since you guys are a nonprofit, tell folks, and we'll drop some links down below, but tell folks how they can get involved and what you guys need right now.
Yeah. So our website is thecentersandusky.org. If you go to that website, it has testimonials, has how to get involved, there's contact cards, how to get in contact with us. Also, we're on Facebook, Campbell Christian Community Center. You'll notice the logo is like a big happy sunshine on there that says the center under there. Yeah. We've got so many great things that are going on there. So if somebody wants to get involved, the best way is to either go to our website and fill out the contact information there, or to go to our Facebook specifically, and you can just private message us on there, like us, you can share our information, you can become a monthly donor or a monthly sponsor there. Everyone can give via PayPal or via check, either one of those works. And follow our social media, because there's lots of ways you can get involved to volunteer, to donate, or to pray for us.
Amazing.
Again, our mission is to create safe spaces for children to learn and grow while being surrounded by caring adults. So whether you financially help support to make that space operate, or you're one of those people that want to be a caring adult for kids in our community, you can get involved.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you for what you're doing, Chris. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, the world needs more people like you, man. And keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna create a bunch of people like you. You're inspiring kids today. So I really do. I can tell by your heart, man. You're a great guy. You're a great guy. So that wraps up today's episode, guys. I want to thank you guys for listening in. I think that there's a lot to unbox with what we just went over in this episode. And like I say in all of them, if you didn't get anything out of today, go back and rewatch this thing with a better heart. It's there's so much that can be unpacked from what Chris and his team are doing over there at the Campbell Christian Community Center. And I would implore you to get involved. If you're watching this and you're not in our area, you're not in the Sandusky area, find somewhere in your community where you can give back to the kids. You know, I think that what they're doing there is great, and I would love for you to support them, but quite frankly, helping out where you're at, I think, is what makes all the difference. So, without further ado, I want to continue to ask yourselves as you go throughout your day, what's your why?